Welcome to the few days. I'm Stanley Farrar.
And I'm Robert Farrar.
And I'm Joshua Farrar. And I think my volume may be coming in too low.
And we're
Test.
taking and looking at a bad world, as they so often say.
Remind me to add that to my 80s playlist later. Mad World.
That song was super emo before emo was a thing.
All around me are familiar faces.
As we take and we look at the intellectuals down in Australia going through and stating that they'll open it up so where people can go to work or take and walk in the park once 80% of the population is inoculated, gotten the jab.
Now remember, the current inoculation rate is 27%.
So
they have the most draconian lockdowns of any country in the world.
For people who haven't noticed this sort of thing, I work tangential to the government. I have a lot of dealings with them. One of the places that I work directly in, the government said, hey, if you guys get 90% vaccinated, we can start loosening up restrictions on you. We can start easing things up. You know what happened when the facility got 90% vaccinated?
I was about to say, you know what happened? Vaccination rates went down.
Once we got 90% vaccinated, suddenly there was a new rule. We all had to wear masks indoors now, and outdoors.
That figures.
Things got more stringent as soon as we hit their line. The line will just keep moving. You can't reach the goal.
Yeah, it always will.
Till they.
That's because they lose power if they take and if they do what they say, they lose power.
All right.
And totalitarians can't afford to lose power.
We start selling pre-prepped torch and pitchfork kits across the world.
Get angry mob supplies. Get your angry mob supplies here. Angry mob supplies.
Remember, only the people who have flaming pitchforks are just indecisive. Choose one.
You get a torch, a pitchfork. You can have a torch in one hand and a pitchfork in the other. But you can't have both at the same time.
And for those of you who didn't get the original reference, Wallace and Gromit and the Were-Rabbit, I believe.
Curse of the Were-Rabbit.
The Curse of the Were-Rabbit.
By the way, so New Zealand recently broke up a protest of one person. Just one. Because New Zealand is the most tyrannical country in the entire planet, on par with China right now. Which is fascinating because New Zealand...
Well, their leaders are all communists anyway. That's because they elected a bunch of communists.
While New Zealand broke up a protest of one person, France has gotten a protest of over 100,000 people for the same thing. And France has an election coming up.
So does Canada, but that didn't stop them from taking and declaring being mandatory vaccine.
I have no idea what's going through Trudeau's mind, because Trudeau barely kept the majority last time. He barely kept his position, and now he's doubling down, thinking that that'll...
Problem is, he doesn't have a choice.
Because his constituency wants it?
No, because his party wants it.
Well,
If
he
if he was to stop doubling down on it, he would be committing more than just political suicide. It might help him with the constituents and the people, but the people who got him elected in the first place, the people who put the money in his pocket in those background rooms, they would make sure he's punished in a way that hurts
Well,
far more than not making office again.
right now he can't even go out into public without getting harassed. He has to make his addresses
Thing
from
about it
private
is,
spaces because people will heckle him every time he goes into public.
Yeah, but he's made his choice.
Yeah,
he,
has.
he doesn't believe that they really have a choice. Because if you look at the Conservative Party of Canada is really the Liberal Party light. They have the same position. The only one that's different is the People's Party, believe it or not. Normally, anytime you hear a People's Party, that's a big deal. Hey, communist! Not in Canada.
Truly, they are a backwards people.
The two most common names for a communist party is the Labour Party and the People's Party.
And the People's Party of Canada is essentially a libertarian party.
You missed the third,
I say a
Yes.
the
libertarian
Green Party.
They're
What
pretty
was that?
commie. The Green Party.
The
Yeah.
Green Party.
Which
That's
they have
exactly-
the Green Party in Canada as well.
The Green Party is just another communist party.
That was the point. Yes,
Yes.
that was the statement.
Now,
I
if you take
broke up on my end, so that's it.
here in the United States, they don't dare take a stand against the vaccine or any common sense measures, as they don't dare stand for, because the pharmaceuticals are pumping enormous amounts of money into the politics, almost as much as the military, the military complex.
The military-industrial complex.
Which, believe it or not, was a term
Yes.
coined by Eisenhower, and then used by communists to bash the government.
Well, the thing is, the military-industrial complex is not the government.
Well, yeah, I know, but it's used to bash the government because, let's be honest, the government really is in their pocket.
Yes, but for the sake of the audience, the military-industrial complex is not the government. It is a series of contractors that have, for effective terms, a monopoly on selling weapons to the government
And governments abroad.
and governments abroad.
Because the U.S. is the world's weapons maker.
Companies like Raytheon, that sort of thing.
Lockheed Martin, Raytheon.
Lockheed Martin is another big one. There's about 6 or 7 of them total. And they've got a stranglehold.
Farms.
And it allows them to charge the government whatever they want for ammunition, weapons, electronics, equipment, tools, parts, materials. And it makes the military waste so much of tax money because the government requires them to go through these vendors rather than go straight to the people.
Well, it's like when I was in a simple IC chip that you could go down and buy over the counter or for $3 and a half or so at any store that sold IC chips. So when I was in, through their vendors, cost over 300 for the same chip.
The
They were
general
having $800 toilet seats.
the general rule of thumb currently, and I'm going to be a little bit more obvious about it currently than I am normally because hey, I've got 8 months. What are they going to do? Is add about 4 zeros to whatever something costs, and that's how much the government, the military is charged for it.
Now, when we take and we look at our current imbeciles in charge, they are banning civilian organizations from going in and rescuing the Americans that are trapped in Afghanistan. And not not moving our current troops out of harm's way when they know a bombing's about to happen.
Man, that just sounds like par for the
They
course for military intelligence.
they were warned ahead of time that this car bomb was going to happen. They told the Americans not to come to the airport because it was going to be bombed, and then ordered the Marines to check IDs for the Afghanis that come to the gate.
What were they thinking?
Well, I've heard a lot of speculation. There are those that believe that they did that on purpose in order to take and have a high body count of Americans so they have an excuse to come back in and attack them at a later point in time. Because the military industrial complex never wanted to get out of Afghanistan in the first place.
Of course.
No, of course.
Getting out of Afghanistan loses them money. A lot of money.
There's also the fact that any withdrawal, you always pull out personnel and material before you pull out the troops.
Which they didn't do.
They pulled out the troops and then started looking at pulling out personnel and completely ignored the material completely. They're doing everything they can to make this fail. You take and combine that with the heightened aggression of China, which is just ramped up since they saw what they're doing with Afghanistan. And their threat, right? And Japan is now taking and having meetings with Taiwan because they no longer trust America to be able to defend against China to defend Taiwan. So Japan's thinking they're going to have to do it.
And at this
Go
point,
Japan.
I think they're right.
Well, what's really interesting about Japan, the current prime minister hasn't been prime minister for very long. His predecessor was extremely popular, but had to step down for health reasons, and he was the hand-picked successor of that prime minister. The current phrase that's being bandied about in Japan for him is the Japanese Joe Biden.
That incompetent, huh?
He's not very popular at all, and it's looking like there's going to be a snap election. The current favorite, if a snap election happens to be very strongly in favor of Japanese rearmament.
As he should be. Any world leader that would allow their country to be helpless on the global stage should not be a leader of their country.
Well, it has been speculated that Biden has actually been extremely successful.
At what?
He has managed to take and and advance the Chinese cause, receive millions of dollars from China into his own personal coffers and his family's coffers. Has taken and advanced Russia, where now they've got a plane they claim can beat the F-22.
Equip the Taliban and ISIS.
They've equipped the Taliban and ISIS to where they've gone from being an insignificant blip to where now they're actually a threat. Oh, he's been extremely successful. He has taken and destroyed the American economy. He has taken and ostracized over half the country. He's advanced the communist cause everywhere he goes. The pity is he hadn't been. He's been extremely successful in advancing our enemies. He's just no good at advancing us.
I want to know who his handlers are. If they're all this bad, how did they manage to become his handlers?
They're all former Obama advisors.
And they have no tact whatsoever.
Well, they're in the end
They
game.
don't think
They
they
don't
need
think
it.
they need it anymore.
They believe they're about to succeed in making the entire country a communist nation.
I'm pretty sure they're still a long ways away from that.
I said what they believe, not what they're going to do. So under a recent poll, the American population in favor of secession has increased tremendously.
I'm personally of the opinion that if they haven't seceded by now, they're not going to.
They're a bunch of cowards.
I won't say that they won't do it because they have to have so much political pressure from their constituents that they don't have a choice before they'll do it. Because they are cowards. One thing that was pointed out recently is that our modern age glamorizes cowardice. See how everything they do, the mask mandates, the lockdowns, the hyper or safety focus on bicycles and every
but
other thing.
Have you noticed
Booster seats until you're 14 years old.
Have you noticed those measures aren't popular? They're just
No, they're not.
they're just loud.
But those measures are a sign of cowardice, so they're giving in to the cowards. And then you've got the red states doing the opposite, where most of them are going to constitutional carry. So you have people carrying guns everywhere.
The way it should be.
It's like one lady from New York was commenting on her trip to Texas, and she said they're all so polite. So that the nicest people you ever come across. Nobody judges anybody. They just are so polite. And what the person she was talking to says, yeah, that's because they're all carrying guns.
You can't see it. He's armed, she's armed, he's...
Said he says it just follows the old saying, a armed society is a polite society.
You know, on a minorly related note, I was explaining to this guy earlier today what the crime of passion law was, and it absolutely blew this guy's mind that such a law could exist.
Does it still exist? I didn't think it did.
I'm pretty sure it still exists. At the very least,
When
I
I
believe
was young,
it exists in Texas still.
when I was young, where I'm from, if your spouse was cheating on you and you killed them and the other person, you'd get off for a crime of passion.
On the caveat that you
But if you
didn't
only
take the time to cool down and make it premeditated murder.
Correct. But even then, most of the time it would have gotten off for crime of passion. As long as you got them both.
Yeah.
If you only killed one of them, you'd go to jail for murder.
What if you killed one and maimed the other, but they got away?
Well, then you probably could have gotten off. But actually, as long as you tried to kill them both, you're pretty safe. But
That's a pretty loose standard. It reminds me of when the Old Testament talks about if somebody is robbing your house. If you if you fight them while they're robbing your house and you kill them, and it's still night, then you won't get punished you won't be killed as a murderer. But as soon as the light touches them, then their blood's on your hands. If they're not dead before the sun comes up.
What if they were robbing you at dawn?
Well, then they picked a really good time.
You better kill him immediately.
Yeah, you better snap his neck.
But it's
the basic idea.
It's one of those things that
the basic idea that, from what I gather, is that there's no wishy-washy. I'm gonna try to kill him. It's either you kill him or you don't, because your life's on the line if you do. Either let him go or make sure that
kill him.
it's done.
No, the police used to tell people that if somebody's breaking into your home, kill them. Don't then call the police. Don't take and maim them. Don't shoot to injure. Kill them. Because if you injured them, they can sue you for damages.
Which is stupid.
Or worse,
but if you kill
they
them
can kill
outright,
you while you're trying to defend yourself.
But if you kill them outright, they can't do a thing. You're set home free. Now, technically speaking, they used to also say if somebody's trying to break into your house, shoot them and drag them inside.
That's what they used to say in Oklahoma anyway. That I know. I've been told.
But in Texas, when you boys were little, a man came home and the thieves came out of his house as he was coming into his house, hopped in their vehicle and started down the road. He goes inside, grabs his 30-30 rifle, steps back out, shoots and kills every one of them to the back window of their car, and it was declared justifiable homicide.
Things were different back then.
Better times.
Better times.
A man took and spotted somebody trying to break into his neighbor's house, and so he shot him through the window and killed him, and got off. Now you're talking about in Oklahoma, they used to tell them to drag them in. They did. Now they've updated the laws in Oklahoma to where your yard is classified under the castle dock
So you
as
don't have
well.
to drag them in.
So
Unless they get
you
under
don't
the
have to drag
sidewalk.
them in anymore. No, because then it's the stand your ground law.
Ah, I see.
Well, actually, in Oklahoma, it's called the Make My Day law.
Go ahead. Make my day.
This here is a 44 Magnum. It's the most powerful handgun in the world. It could blow your head clean off. Now, in all this excitement, I've been wondering, did I fire 5 shots or 6? Well, I really don't know.
Feel lucky, punk.
What you gotta ask yourself. You feeling lucky?
Great movie.
Oh, but when you take and you think about it, okay, they purposefully passed laws to undo the problems they had in the law. Year back when I was a kid, to where you couldn't terminate an assailant if they weren't on your own property. Now they've passed laws saying you can run down BLM if they get in your way.
I was tempted to make a Rona joke there, but seeing as you technically...
Now, we were having a
Be
discussion.
accurate.
Robert, you covered this at one point. No. That was sorry. I was having a conversation with someone else who was studying criminology. Something about jaywalking. Does anyone know the exact rules behind if you accidentally hit someone while they're jaywalking?
I don't know.
Because from what I gathered, jaywalking is actually a leftover crime from way back in the day, back when cars were just a rich people thing. And it got passed because all these rich people kept getting heavily fined for hitting people who were just walking out in the middle of the street. So they lobbied to have the jaywalking law crossed. So if they accidentally hit someone who wasn't in designated crossing areas, then the person who was hit was fined for jaywalking instead of the driver. So theoretically speaking, if the BLM protesters are not in a designated crossing area, then by jaywalking law, they are to be fined if you hit them for standing in the middle of the road.
Well,
and that's in every state in the union.
in a few years ago, a man in a wheelchair was crossing a crosswalk in Arkansas and got hit in the crosswalk, and the judge declared that he was at fault because he didn't cross the road fast enough.
A man in a wheelchair.
Yes.
How fast is a man in a wheelchair supposed to cross the road?
Before the light changes.
And how quickly was this judge relieved of his position?
He never has been.
He's a guy in a wheelchair. They never cross the road fast. Even those motorized wheelchairs take a long time.
He stated that he only had the authority to cross that road while the light said walk. And once the light changed and don't walk, he was supposed to have already been on the other side, and the cars had the right to hit him.
No, cars never have the right to hit anyone, ever. It's
And
one of the rules of
that is the complete
road.
opposite of what I was just arguing, Robert.
But it is one of the unspoken, at least cultural rules of the road is that the pedestrian always has the right of way. There are
In a
there are
crosswalk, normally.
there are exceptions to the rule, like when people are intentionally blocking the drivers or throw themselves out in front of the vehicles or stuff like that.
Well, it's like in Great Britain, they took and had a group of protesters recently lay down with their head underneath the wheels of a van
They were asking to get run
during a
over.
protest. My personal opinion, the guy should have got in his van, started it up, and put it in gear.
See how quick they move then.
And then start inching forward until they get out of his way.
Downside with
They were
that,
idiots, but I don't think they're that big.
downside with that is if he rolled onto their hair and they got stuck there. In which case, then you just stop and let them think about their life choices for a while.
So somebody gets
Yeah. As they scream.
I'm not causing any physical harm whatsoever to these people. They were already down there.
They put themselves there as a form of protest. I'm not sure
And
exactly how their hair got stuck under the tire. I don't know what you mean.
even if he had to run them over, what do you mean? I'm just helping them with their protest. They laid down in front of those tires, knowing I was fixing to drive forward. They wanted to be run over. I just obliged.
It's like what happens when those vegans chain themselves to those the slaughter racks uh, in a meat processing plant, and it's really funny to see how fast they change their tune once those machines are turned on.
Well, it's like the tree huggers that take and chain themselves to trees when those lumberjacks go out there with their big portable saws that reach around and grab the tree and cut it off. Reach down there and start wrapping that thing around them. They get loose real quick.
Yeah.
But one problem they do have is they drive nails into the tree.
I seem to remember a an Abbott and Costello sketch from where there was this one suffragette who just had this thing for chaining herself to absolutely random things throughout the movie. And I don't remember why, but it was a running gag where she just kept chaining herself to stuff. Like there was a statue and a fence and a
And that's
gate.
actually, they actually had problems with the suffragettes doing just that. They started that nonsense. Now they've got written documentation from the feminists of the 70s stating that they were lying and knowingly lying in order to push propaganda to promote the current leftist agenda.
Well, the funny thing about it is, if you look at it, they've gotten basically everything they asked for, and yet statistically, women are getting unhappier year by year.
Well, that's because they keep being told what they want. And actually, here, call back to a previous episode, right? Our Wizard of Oz discussion. I don't think the Silver Slippers and the Yellow Brick Road are talking about the gold standard and the silver standard. I think they are talking about the path of life that the government wants you to follow, versus where life will take you on your own 2 feet.
Well, I don't honestly know what the author's intent was.
Uh, I,
He denies both that.
I can't say for sure that was his intention, but that is what I get out of it. Is that I don't I that it seems to be talking about being told what path to take in life versus going your own way.
Because he always denied that there was any political analogy in the book.
But people can
Yeah, I
lie
don't buy
too.
it. Yeah, he can say that all he wants. I don't buy it.
But anyway, yeah, women are becoming increasingly unhappy, and men are becoming increasingly unhappy because who wants to deal with a bunch of increasingly unhappy women?
Actually, last statistics I saw, men were becoming statistically more happy in
Were
comparison to women.
really? How'd that happen? Did they
That
actually
that's
start?
when you don't control for the guys that choose to remain single their entire life.
Because generally speaking, men have been edged out of the are being edged out of the workplace, and that makes them unhappy.
Well, that makes them unhappy, but not as much so as the comparison of being in the workplace for women.
That makes them really unhappy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, whenever you take and you get a group of women together in a work environment, it's not long before the drama queens kick in and they ruin it for everyone.
Well, it's really funny. Men are really efficient when they're around other men. Men are also really efficient when they want to impress women. Women just can't be around women.
So,
Yeah, that,
from my observations, dealing with a group of people that are entirely male that I've had to work with in the past, they worked very well, very efficiently, very on point. Sprinkle a couple of women in there, and the whole thing fell apart. And it wasn't because of those individual women. For the most place, the problem was the men trying to impress those women that ruined everything. It made so much inefficient. So I would counter your argument there from just my
It's still more efficient than
circumstantial
a
evidence.
group of women
No,
together.
it wasn't.
Was it not?
It wasn't. It was actually extremely inefficient until the proportion of women passed the proportion of men. That is the only circumstance that it got worse than having just a few women and a majority of men. The closer it gets to 50%, it sort of evens out. It's never as efficient as 100% male, but it gets relatively even. Then
a
once the
female
women
off
are larger than the men, things start tanking again to be much worse. The only thing that is worse than just a few women scattered majority of men is 100% women.
now a female officer in the United States Navy years ago stated that the notion of a female only ship was insanity. She said they would kill each other. Said the only thing that curbs their women and their destructive tendencies was the presence of men. And that was a female officer in the Navy that said it. When Congress was talking about setting up some entirely female ships.
So, do men just have a better natural outlet for their destructive tendencies? Because it's men who have that reputation.
Oh, that's just
Um,
it, though. Men and women's destructive tendencies are different. A man's destructive tendency causes him to destroy things. Tangible, physical things. Things that can be replaced. Things that can be repaired. A woman's destructive tendency causes her to destroy people, their reputations, their lives, their sanity, their minds.
this is what some of the female commentators now refer to as mm, they used to use it toxic femininity. Men and women seem to work well together in, in couples or in small groups. But
And it's best if the
women, on the other
proportions are
hand,
around 50%. They can be slightly varied, but they should be close to 50% or things start falling apart.
but whenever you have a large portion of women and only a few men, the women get toxic.
How so?
And if you've got there they start picking each other to pieces to undermine each other to make themselves look better. Now, when it comes to
It's the
men,
queen bee syndrome, Robert,
younger men,
where you can only have one queen bee. And since they can't physically force the men to do what they want, they have to make the other women seem less so that they won't so that the men won't perceive those other women as being worth listening to. And it causes them to tear each other down.
now when it comes to young men, they tend to show off for females, so so you run into problems there too.
Like the ones that I mentioned when you've got a large portion of men with a few females.
Yeah.
That now that you bring that up, that
They're
was
le-
primarily with young men and young women. I don't have a sample size for middle age and older because it's been entirely my
middle
own
middle-aged
observations.
men. It kind of depends on the social the psychology of the individual when it deals with the older men,
And how mature and mentally
because
developed they are.
in a lot of cases the older men tend to try to treat the younger women like their children.
Which is unhealthy
I've
in
seen
its
that.
own way.
While if they're going through a midlife crisis, then they can be as bad as the young men.
Yeah.
Now, the feminist organizations have taken and gotten seriously divided over over Congress discussing putting women in the draft.
In my case, I just want an even standard.
Well, I've always argued for an even standard. I think that they need to up the physical requirements of everyone in the military back up to the old standards and quit cutting them slack whether they're male or female.
Agreed.
Because if you're not physically capable of taking it, doing the job, you're just going to hurt somebody else and probably get hurt yourself.
Usually both.
So whether it's female or male, the same amount of pull-ups should be required, the same speed running, the same uh,
For the branches that
ability to
require
lift
pull-ups.
weight. Yes. Well, I think that all the branches should require pull-ups.
And I think that
I,
Carthage should be destroyed.
I also believe that they all should be required to have the same running standards and swimming standards. The, so that when they take and they run however many miles they're going to be required to run, that they all have to finish it at the same time. And not the time for a 60-year-old man. They used to have, when I was in, they had standards for women, they had standards for men. And our senior chief used to state that he could complete the run by walking.
Well, that's because the standard gets lower as you age.
Yes. And the female in his age group were given almost twice the length of time it was given.
They could walk it, stop mid-course for a coffee, spend 15 minutes talking, and then finish the walk.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. Because the whole point of the physical readiness is to make sure that everybody on board can take and accomplish the tasks needed to be accomplished in the same time frame. So if we are under attack, I can get to my duty station at the same length of time it takes for the other people that are supposed to be in that duty station. We can all take and handle the same ammunition boxes. We can all take and handle the same recoil for the firearm. We can all take and do what is necessary to be combat efficient. Or in the case of fighting a fire, we can all take and lug the hose. We can all take and handle the air equipment. We can all handle driving the wooden plugs into the hull of the ship to make sure it doesn't sink.
And thing is, for the Navy, everyone on board a ship is trained to do that. Is required to know how.
So if you have one person who can't do it, despite the training, they've gone through the training, they can't do it. They physically are incapable of doing it. That's a detriment for the whole ship.
Yeah, they don't belong on the ship.
So if you can't drag that fire hose, or if you can't take and get to where you're supposed to be in the length of time it takes that you need to be there, you're worthless. And that has nothing to do with gender. That has everything to do with physical capability.
Though, if you say that your gender doesn't influence your physical capability, you're a liar.
Yes, but there's still women like the one I passed in Walmart the other day.
You've been on quarantine for over a week. Which other day was this?
Yesterday.
Okay, that makes sense. The first day of the end of your quarantine.
Yes.
Powerlifter or bodybuilder type?
Was walking through Walmart. Bodybuilder type.
Power body lifter.
Uh, I mean, she was cut, and her arms would have made three of mine.
So how did she stop the bleeding?
Through sheer force of will.
She's like, "Argh!" The cut just seals.
I mean, you ever seen one of those bad anime where someone gets stabbed by something and the character just tightens their muscles around the blade so they can't pull it out? It's like that.
But she was wearing those outfits. You could see her abdomen. So she had a 6-pack abdomen, and I mean this woman. I haven't been in that kind of shape since my 20s, and probably never was as large, muscular wise, as this person.
Did they check her ID before she got that 6-pack?
Oh, she looked old enough, no problem. I didn't say she looked young. I'm just saying that there was a person who probably could have taken and passed the men's requirements for the PRT of the military.
And
But
in my
that's the
case,
exception, not the
that's
rule.
all I'm really asking for. I don't care what gender they are as long as they can fit the standards. The standards shouldn't be adjusted or tapped down for people that can't make it.
And let's face it, if a man has gotten old enough that he can't pass those standards,
He
has no
shouldn't stay
business
in.
being on the ship either.
Yeah.
It's those standards are there for a reason.
At least they haven't touched the sea.
When I got injured in my yet when I was in the Navy and got injured, the reason they pulled me off the ship is I was no longer fit for sea duty because I physically couldn't do the lifting anymore. I was unfit for sea.
Well, here's a little tidbit of information that is completely unclassified, so I'll let it out here. But do you know how long in a general quarters situation on board a ship you are required to be able to get from where you are on any point of the ship to where you need to be and have everything locked down for potential oncoming water or fire or whatever? Just have everything in position. It's a material condition where you basically have to have every hatch locked down, every ventilation turned off, every valve shut, so that nothing can. So that if a hole was to be punched inside the ship or a fire was to be started, anything, it could be reacted to and isolated immediately, at any point. 7 minutes.
7 minutes.
7 minutes.
I couldn't remember. It's been a long time since I've gone through.
And we drill
training
over and over and over and over and over again until we can hit that 7 minutes. Ideally under. And that, by the way, counts having a full team in firefighting gear just in case. with hoses laid out and nozzles turned and oxygen masks on and the bottles primed, everything ready for something to go down in 7 minutes. I did say I wasn't going to kick around the subject as much this episode.
Yeah, I'm surprised you've actually let so much information out.
Well, like I said, I've only got a few months left at this point. There's no there's no, as long as I don't cover anything secret, which I won't. It won't matter what I let slip now.
No, you want to
Well,
wrap up the episode for us?
It's a waste of time.
if you've taken and enjoyed our little episode, we would encourage you to take and share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, share it with the disgruntled individual down the street. And feel free to take and give us a thumbs up, a thumbs down, comments, angry tirades. It's even remarkable little comments about the illustrious goings on of the world around us. Because we'll be happy to take and have a conversation with you.
And remember, if you can't lock
As
down
for-
your home for fire, flooding, intruder, or missile strike in 7 minutes, you are failing yourself and your family.
The last one really strikes home.
And please subscribe.